Hey everyone, welcome back to another Unprofessionals, where we try to entertain you by being as unprofessional as possible and fuck everything up. With me tonight is my co-host, as always, Magog. How you doing?
Good, good. Hope everybody's having a good, was it Wednesday? It's Wednesday.
Yep, good
God.
Wednesday. So
Oh,
first, let's take care of the usual business, as we are unprofessionals. Let's hear a sound off from the chat if anyone is too low or too high. Are the volumes okay? Um,
yes, please let me know because for some reason I always have problems with Discord in my microphone.
Indeed. That is, and I can't really tell because I can only hear you. So I don't know if I'm lower or if I'm higher or what's going on. So let's hear from the chat.
Yes, exactly.
Don't see anyone screaming in agony yet. So there's that.
Right.
Someone says your audio sucks today, but yeah, it is. It is a little bit blown out, but it is what it is.
Well, I can always switch to my other mic, but
No, but I can adjust the volume here, so that's fine. If someone is too high or too low, I can fix it. I just need to know. So there's that. Oh, got a little super chat there from 2A. Sup, my joggers? How you doing, my man? Nice to see you. Anyway, it seems like people are okay with it.
yeah, you know, I think I want to switch to my other mic because I just had to listen to the watch link and I sound like garbage. I think this mic is done, to be honest with you. I've had it for like 3 years, so it might be just done, honestly. It won't take me long. Just give me a second. Entertain the people while I switch to my razor. All right, let's try that out. How do I sound? Okay. All right. Well, it's going to have to be. It's the only mic I have besides the one on top of my camera, and I think that one's blown. So, um, yeah, I can hear you. Let me rejoin. Hold on.
All right, can you hear this? Let's see if this is better.
All right. There we go.
How about that?
I fucking hate Discord.
It is a pain in the ass, that's for sure. Everyone's saying no undoomed audio. I think I've fixed it, but
we can't hear undoomed. What they're saying.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yes, everyone's saying yes, can hear you now. Okay. Yes, as usual, you just have to fucking log in and log out, and Jesus, I hate Discord. Oh well.
It is troublesome, isn't it?
Yeah. Every fucking time there's always something. But anyway, we should have a comment say the stream starts 10 minutes in because we are unprofessional, and that's the way it is.
We can hear both of you now, so I think we're good. All right. Yay for me.
Typical.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to fork over the money for a new boom mic on top of my camera, because that, even when I record videos, it needs a lot of audio work in editing, because I think it's blown. Honestly, I think I blew a baffle in it or something. I don't know.
Right. So, which one was this? Is the Razer, and the other one was the Yeti, or
the Rode? It's a Rode mic on top of the camera.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but what I'm talking through now is the Razer, and
right.
it's a desktop, kind of like a Blue Yeti, but
right. Yeah, shotgun mics are kind of weird, so
yeah,
kind of probably better to just get some cheap ass one. You get like a Samson or something.
Yeah, I actually would love to get some really like high quality lapel mics.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you, I mean, maybe not to do streams, just use like my Razer to do streams.
Mm-hmm.
But like for recording, I think I might get rid of the whole microphone on top of the camera thing and try to do an actual lapel mic, so I can also film doing some stuff outside.
Right.
Because the audio quality outside sucks with just a boom mic picking up everything. So.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if you're gonna be doing a little bit more of your stuff where you're moving around, you got your sets going and everything, a nice lapel mic that you can hide somewhere. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to somebody who's an audio expert on that and which ones to buy, which is a good brand,
right.
how much money is worth spending on them. So anyway,
yeah.
I doubt people came over here to hear us talk about microphones.
No. Got a little super chat here from Jarl Falstaff. Says, hail and greetings, McGog and Undoomed. Dollars for crack and Pokemon cards. Lol. You mean hookers and coke, obviously.
Yeah.
It's just a politically correct term for it. We got you. And never... What does that say? Never so clever as this. Okay, I got you. Says buy stocks in weapons manufacturers. Yeah, that's probably words to live by, I would say.
Well, I tell you, a lot of my friends bought their first guns recently because of the COVID-19 and now all this other stuff popping off, and nobody's sure what the future is going to be like, and everybody's a little frightened, and they want some home defense weapons, and so they came out shooting on Saturday. Because I have land, I have plenty of land for shooting guns, and so we had a nice Saturday afternoon of blowing shit up. I had some empty Coke cans we filled with water. I had some color changing targets. We had some fun just shooting trees too, just shooting shotguns at the fucking saplings.
That's awesome.
Just knocking trees over, man.
Dan Watts sent a super chat, says happy to Discord you and help on the audio stuff. All right, well, Discord us both, I guess, and especially Magog, because he's in the market for a new mic. So
yeah, maybe we can talk. You can like maybe message Undoomed, and he can I can send you the link to my server.
Yeah, exactly.
You join the side quest server if you want. I'll go ahead and get a link to that and put it in the chat here, so anybody who wants to join side quest can join.
Yes. And of course, we should also, or I should point out that any supporters on my channel, be it Patreon or Subscribestar or channel membership on YouTube, can, in fact, send messages directly into the stream from the supporter live stream chat on Discord. So there's that. Anyway, so what should we take care of first? We're talking about that
Guns.
guns. Well, we took care of that. Calm down. Calm down.
Oh, I do have one funny story from Saturday's shooting with my friends.
Okay.
Some of them have never shot a lot of guns.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a lot of experience with guns, so I was basically kind of being the range instructor, making sure everybody had proper trigger discipline and barrel safety and all that good stuff. And they're shooting brand new guns that they just bought, so first time out of the box, and firing some pistols. Most of my friends bought 9mm, but I had my little Ruger 357 snub nose revolver. And as you know, a 357 revolver can also shoot 38s.
Right.
So I go out there and I shoot some 38s in my 357 snub nose and, blow the hell out of a couple cans. It's not very accurate. It's a snub nose. It's only accurate up about 10 feet, and then you're just shooting everywhere.
Right.
And then they were all like, I want to try. And so I pulled a little switcheroo on them. I shot 38. And then I loaded 357 rounds and gave it to him.
Okay. Did they break their hand?
Like, that fucking hurts a little. they fire that fucking thing, come, bam, it kicks back, and they're like, damn, that, woo. I was like, you better grip it harder than that, boy.
Grab it like a cock. All right. Well, that's awesome. Got a super chat from Amon Sewell. Now is your turn to get some cash. Popcorn for watching the crap that show's playing out. That show playing out. Okay.
The crap show. The shit show.
The crap show. That there we go. It's like your slogan in that I put in your beginning of your streams. What was it now? This is a crap show?
Yeah, side quest. Well, viewer discretion advised. Side quest is a shit show.
There we go. That was a long time ago. I read that,
and it's still on there. It's still on my intros.
Well, it's fitting. It works.
Yeah, for sure.
All out of bubblegum has a super chat says I've been looking into how to make stink bomb paintballs. Or maybe fill them with liquid heat or ghost pepper oil for home protection. Right. Why don't you get Magog Skunk to provide some liquid for you?
Don't do that.
That totally fucked up an entire live stream for you, didn't
it? Don't fill paintballs with pepper spray or anything like that, because one, it degrades the integrity of the paintball, so it might explode in your own barrel. Nice. And blind you. And the other thing is, you don't want pepper spray all over your house. Anything you touch that has it, and then you accidentally wipe your eyes, it'll burn. Don't do that. Best thing to do if you want to use a paintball gun for home defense is just buy some paintballs and freeze them. Just put them in the freezer. Harden them up.
Can't you just use marbles then?
No, marbles are different size. It won't be accurate anyway. Paintball guns are, some of them are accurate, but it depends on the paintball gun. But
right.
Yeah, you can. It's actually better to just buy a nice little tactical shotgun, load it with some birdshot or some rock salt. Somebody comes in your home, fucking pepper them with it.
Yeah, that's probably a nice sort of compromise. The bloody talker has a super chat says, I have a better idea for protection, the AR-15. Well, there's that if you're going to want to go full all out.
Little overkill for home defense, but they are fun to shoot on the range and shoot outside if you own some land. I have my AR-15. It's
and acres of target practice.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I have my AR-15, 357. I have a 308 hunting rifle, Browning 308. I have a Remington shotgun. I have a...
Okay, show off.
Excuse me. Pardon. I also...
Did you just come?
No, yes. Just thinking about my guns just made me nut everywhere. There's so much nut undoomed.
Oh. All right, so should we talk a little bit about that video I just uploaded?
Sure.
What do you think about my theory? I guess we should fill in the people who didn't see it. It's basically that I think that we're seeing the death throes of the movie theater market, and I am very glad. I am not saddened by the fact that they're probably going out of business. Obviously, they won't all go out of business, but hopefully we can get to a point where we can be able to stream new releases on the day they're released. I don't really care if they charge me twice as much as it would have cost me to go to the cinema. I am sick and tired of cinemas. I don't care. I want to be able to stream. What are your thoughts?
I mean, for the most part, I agree with you. I think with the new technological age, that theaters are going to be kind of the dinosaur. They're not going to completely go away. You're always going to have like some theaters here and there that are kind of more of a nostalgic thing, kind of like drive-ins are.
Yeah, sure. And obviously, like real theaters, they haven't gone away too, but it's not really the center of attention that movie theaters are or have been.
Right.
They don't completely go away ever, but I'm just saying, hopefully we're seeing a shift where these guys can just get with the times, like the record industry did 10 years ago with Spotify and all that shit, and just release everything.
Right, exactly. Britisher's here.
Hey, Britisher, how you doing?
How are we doing?
I'm doing excellent.
What ungodly time is it in your part of the world at the moment?
6 p.m. my time.
4 here.
Oh, well, there you go. See, it's midnight here.
Yeah, you're.
Well, that's not ungodly. That's just the beginning of the night, basically.
So, what is the theme? What have I missed so far?
Well, we were just now getting into this discussion of my latest video about the fact that the movie theaters are dying, and I am celebrating it.
Oh, well, yes, I have heard you before saying that you are not a great fan of movie theaters. That, as far as you're concerned, it would best all be for download,
yes,
or streaming.
Yes, we just talked a little bit. Like you came in maybe 3 minutes after we started talking about it, but basically what I said is I understand that some people will always love it, and it should be. There should be a couple of them left, just like there are a few theaters, like real theaters left for real enthusiasts and stuff. That's fine. But I think finally, maybe not really probably within this year. It's still going to take them a few years, but I think this might be just this thing that sets it off where they can finally catch up with the times and do the Spotify things that the music industry did 10 years ago and just release everything. So I think that pretty much catches you up.
Well, but isn't it? Well, I mean, it may be due to the sort of film industry almost murdering itself at the moment. I don't think they're helping themselves with a huge amount of superhero films. Because for all
well,
for all the hype, they're not really that much of an event. But I mean, I remember sort of, the joy of going to watch sort of really good films at the cinema, and it shapes you for life. You continue to associate that kind of prickle of excitement of going to watch the big film that is coming, and it's at the big cinema.
Well, I don't think that's changed. I mean, people are fucking going insane over these movies. They certainly have the amount of anticipation.
I don't think they're going insane.
Sorry?
They already are. I don't think they're going insane. They already must be in order to be excited by these films.
Well, there's that, but
Time out real quick. I'm reading in the chat that Britisher is coming through a little low, so can you hike his volume, Undoomed?
Sure. Let's go up like
I
that.
can hear him fine, but you know how Discord is.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see if that helps. Also,
it's always sort of different how it translates certain volumes, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. And like I said, I can't tell because I can't really distinguish between myself and you guys when I'm hearing myself coming in from another source. So anyway, we got a super chat here from Drew McTig. I'm probably murdering your name there. Sorry about that. What's your favorite dinosaur? Obviously a T-Rex. All other dinosaurs that came after T-Rex to be badder than T-Rex are just fake.
Well, but wasn't there some gargantuan T-Rex?
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean. They don't count.
Oh, they don't count.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Those were like made up Hollywood, just some guy in Maya sitting there doing, how can I make it bigger?
Well, no. I think there was. I remember sort of reading something once that there was some period. I mean, don't ask me what it was, but there was some sort of one of these ancient periods in which dinosaurs apparently grew to ridiculous size. I mean, where the equivalent of the T-Rex was much larger than the T-Rex. So there does seem to be some beast that would have more than likely eaten T-Rex for breakfast. But please don't ask me what the name of the thing was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how accurate they are with that stuff, but it really just for me just comes down to nostalgia. Basically. The T-Rex was the thing that set it off, and the other ones just seemed like, okay, we got to make it bigger. We got to make it bigger. We got to make it bigger. Every movie, So.
I mean, way back when, you pretty much had, what was it? The Stegosaurus, the T-Rex, the Brontosaurus, and the pterodactyl.
Right.
Those were really, and then sort of Hollywood introduced us to the raptors and. The archaeologists have been. Well, it's not archaeologists, isn't it? What is it called? The folks that actually deal with dinosaur bones.
Paleontologists.
Paleontologists. There you go.
Right.
Yes, they've since kind of unearthed various different species. But I mean, you could be very creative and actually pick a bird and say that's my favorite dinosaur.
Well, that'd be sort of
hummingbird,
tongue in cheek, I guess.
But you'd be cheating to a certain extent because I mean, who would think of a sparrow? When you think dinosaur, you think great beast. Mm-hmm. So you could kind of deliberately go for a hummingbird or a sparrow or something like that and say, "Oh, that's my favorite dinosaur."
I saw a story. They found a pterodactyl in the UK, and typically pterodactyls are found in China.
Right.
And everybody's like, this is an amazing discovery. We never knew pterodactyls were in this area. And I'm like, they had wings, motherfucker.
there was that lady, wasn't it? I've just got a book here. Hang on. Here we are. Mary Anning. She was the great heroine, wasn't she? That when the entire science was born, they kind of needed dinosaur fossils. Now, where do you find them? And there were somewhere, I mean, she was really sort of low working class, living in some kind of fishing village in abject poverty or whatever. But realizing that these folks wanted fossils, she lived near some cliffs that were rich in fossils. So whenever there was landslides or whatever, she would be out there looking for the freshly unearthed layers of rock or the stuff that's lying on the beach in order to find fossils. And she became the world's leading supplier in fossils.
And you just happen to have that book laying right in front of you.
It actually just happened to be right next to me here, and I remembered it's sort of with various. It's a book with sort of various, British personas, Victorian times, and whatever. And I just thought, hang on a moment, yes, here it is, Mary Anning, and yes, she became an astonishing expert. So she was kind of supplying people who were, members of the Royal Society. And I don't even know whether this woman could read.
Okay, this is the best thing I've ever heard. The British are trying to sound even more posh.
Oh, yes, I can do that. If I really, really try. But yes, she. I think she kind of ended up sort of quite poor, despite supplying all these fossils, and despite sort of several leading paleontologists of the early days kind of referring to her and sort of giving her credit, saying this woman, without her, we would be nowhere.
Right.
And I think in the end, if I'm not mistaken, there was some sort of money kind of that given to her. There was some kind of pension or something like that, because one kind of recognized what for a service she had done to science.
Right.
So yes, there was this kind of penniless woman looking for dinosaur bones on the British coast.
If she only would have lived now, she could have been a technical consultant for Jurassic Park.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Anyway, we got a super chat from Dr. Litch. It says, Kong versus Godzilla movies coming soon. Who is going to win, in your opinion?
God.
Well,
I think it's going to be Kong and Godzilla are going to fight, but then later on in the movie they're going to become friends and fight something else.
Probably, yeah. I mean, they can't kill off either one, but if they really, really, really had to, they would kill off Kong. But I don't think they will.
Well, I think Magog has got it dead on.
Yeah.
Except the timing is not quite right. So it's not going to happen in the same movie. So in the first movie, it is going to be Kong versus Godzilla. And then Kong and Godzilla will have to team up to take on Predator and Alien.
No, it's like the first one is going to be Kong versus Godzilla, and the next one is going to be Godzilla versus Kong.
Well, they set up in the last movie, the King of the Monsters. They set up I'm getting my monsters mixed up in my head. What's the one with the 3 heads? Is that?
Oh yeah. I know which one you mean, but I don't remember the name now. The chat will tell us in 15 seconds because that's the delay.
I wonder if there will be a scene in which Godzilla is abandoned on a distant planet, and you will get a shot where the camera zooms away from him very quickly, and he's roaring at the sky, Kong! Sorry,
no,
I just had to.
Basically, at the end of King of the Monsters, they set up that one of the heads was still like intact, right?
Right. Yeah. Ravenous Demon says it's Hydra. That's right. That's Hydra, right?
No, it's Ghidorah.
Oh.
He is a Hydra though, because he has 3 fucking dragon heads. So I guess he's a Hydra. But
right.
Yeah, King Ghidorah's head was like Charles Dance walked into the warehouse and was like, "I'll buy it from you," because these like black market guys were like, "We found a head," and I think
why does Hydra sound so familiar though? I mean,
because Hydra's a classic Greek monster.
No, but there's like several people saying Hydra in the chat. There's also several people saying Ghidorah, and I don't know.
Hydra fought Hercules, or yes. Hercules fought Hydra, really.
Hydra's also the name of the Nazi.
No. I know that. I know that. We got a super chat from 2A Trans Kong. Well, maybe the world's not ready for that yet. The world is not ready.
Okay, that tickled me.
But No, I think that's going to set up. They're going to do some government experiment and bring Ghidorah back to life, and Kong and Godzilla will have to team up and kill Ghidorah again.
Right.
Ghidorah is a kind of a Hydra. You got to think Ghidorah's the name, whereas Hydra's the monster. Like,
but
Okay, well, that makes
Ghidorah-
sense. Then both are sort of right.
But could
Yeah,
Ghidorah fly?
Yes.
In the movie.
Oh, he could
Yeah.
in the old movies too. He was
Right.
he was Monster X, came from outer space. And he had wings and he had 3 heads that shot.
There were always folks in rubber suits, really, weren't they? Way back when,
they
in the
were,
originals. Yes.
Sure, back then, yeah.
Yeah.
And
There's a
that's
certain
kind of
charm
what
to that, to
that's
be
kind of
honest.
what they did with the new Godzilla. Is they try to make it look like it's a guy in a suit, even though it's CGI. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, they wanted to kind of throw back to the originals, and so like even though he was CGI, Godzilla was a little like jiggly. He had like fat. He was like
So there's a bit of deliberate ropiness in it.
yeah. There's a little bit of a jiggle when he walks and shit, and it's like the old rubber suits.
Yeah. And it has the same anatomy as a guy in a suit as well,
Faithless in the chat says King Kong and Godzilla versus white supremacy.
Well, I could definitely see him doing that one.
But it would be cis Kong and Godzilla, you say, not trans Kong.
Yeah. The world is not ready, pretty sure. Come on.
We need a Godzilla movie with space Nazis.
From space.
From space.
Mind you, I had a very interesting conversation. Admittedly, jokey conversation when someone brought up their favourite misspelling of fascist was fascist, where they forget the S.
Right.
And it wasn't long before someone came in and suggested, it might even have been the same person, I'm not sure, came in and suggested that undoomed is a fascist.
No, people are fascist towards me. That would be more accurate, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So we celebrated that line a bit, hoping that eventually Undoomed would arrive to tell us all off. Yes.
They're pressing us, me and Discordia, basically.
You goddamn faceless freak. Shoot up, you fascist. We have all the other ists, don't we? We have fascists, we have liberalists, we have fucking feminists, we have fucking ableist, ageist.
Yeah, you can put ist after anything, pretty much. I wonder what a carist is.
A carist?
Well, someone had to ask.
But somebody's discriminating against cars.
It depends.
We need to go back to horses. We need to go back to horses.
You horses.
Surely it depends on the pronunciation, surely. You can either be a carist in that regard or a carist.
Yes, there is a distinction there to be made, for sure. What is a carist, though?
Well, that would obviously somehow be related to caring. So who knows? Quite a few people on the left might be carists. I don't know.
Right.
What if ist becomes so popular that we start putting it, like we start reforming words just to have ist? Because it's like the symbol of all ideology. It's like, we're not Christians anymore. We're Christianists.
Pretty much. I mean, it is Islamists, right? There's that's a word.
Islamist is a word, yes.
Yes.
Buddhist.
Well, it's the famous isms, isn't it? There was that sitcom with Rowan Atkinson in it, The Thin Blue Line, in which he's supposed to give his various police officers. It's kind of set in a police station, and he's supposed to give them a kind of talk, on equal rights and modern day civil liberties, And I think even the episode is just called Ism or something like that. He's standing there on a whiteboard, sort of trying to come up with the words to actually homoerotica phobia ism. It's just.
It's gone too far, man. Holy shit. So what has happened in the United Kingdom this week? Have you burned down the country or?
Well, I mean, the Americans are obviously setting a challenge. They're setting the example of burning down the country, and both the French and the British, both in this case in Paris and London, I don't think there's been any disturbances anywhere else, have decided to emulate the great nation across the Atlantic. So
Right.
in Paris, there were burning barricades and running battles with police by people who wanted to commemorate the death of George Floyd and some chap whose forename I forget. The surname was Traore, who was some chap who I think died in police custody or due to alleged police violence 3.5 years ago. So they didn't have a recent case to get upset about. So they decided to protest something that had happened 3.5 years ago and, set the barricades alight. In London, we've just had, some what clearly seem to be Antifa types going toe-to-toe with police officers who at the time really seemed somewhat overwhelmed. So there was a very large gathering in one of the parks in London. I forget which one it was. I mean, so much so that you sort of said, what happened to this COVID stuff? It seems to have gone right out the window. And the BBC, whenever they've covered it today, they've shown images from helicopter shots of the large crowd. But there hasn't been a single incident reported, even though there's plenty of footage available on social media of these fights with the police. It as far as the official record is concerned, it just never happened.
Does that mean it didn't happen? Because I thought in the United Kingdom you have basically a camera in every, pretty much up your ass by now.
They believe very much in CCTV. It's so that they can show us nice images of the bombers after the bomber, 2 or 3 days after the bombers have blown themselves up.
Right, but
seems actually to serve very little purpose otherwise.
Right, but I mean, if no one can find any footage of it in the UK, it must not have happened.
Television is what I mean. Yes.
Okay.
As I say, there's plenty of footage on social media, so it's clearly happened.
Okay, I see what you're
The police must be sitting on plenty of CCTV, but as far as BBC television is concerned, there hasn't been a whisper of it.
Basically, it's all peaceful. There's no fighting.
Yes,
yet they have
social
shown
media.
Nothing happened.
Media
Absolutely nothing happened today.
They have shown us very, lots of images of throngs of people and people giving the Black Power salute. Very dignified, very Martin Luther King, but the fighting that never happened.
Right,
your country, I will give it to you. You guys know how to do propaganda at least, because your state is in control of the media. Whereas here, we literally have like journalists standing in front of a burning building, going, "It's mostly peaceful."
I used that in the week that was in the last episode. Yes, I couldn't help myself. There were 2 incidents that really made me chuckle. One of them was another CNN reporter who was standing along the road when there was a caravan of cars going by, and he was telling everybody, how peaceful it was. And as he was trying to do that, people were throwing bottles at him.
All right, hold on. I got to do a super chat here. Shograth, is that how you pronounce it?
Sheogorath.
Sorry?
Sheogorath.
All right.
It's one of the gods from Skyrim.
Right. Says, Undoomed, check your Streamlabs, you moneyist. All right, sorry about that. I did forget to check that, so I'll check that. What was it? Sheogorath says on Streamlabs, what do Mr. Floyd and my ex-girlfriend have in common? When I found out they were being choked by another man, I realized I'd never cared in the first place. Oh, that's dark.
It's pretty dark. Yeah.
It's dark, man. And then we have a super chat from ERA Turbo 99999 says tourists. Okay, that's a dad joke.
Tourism is another ism.
Yeah, tourism. That's a bad thing. You can't be ists against those tours. Um, Dr. Litch says, I vote we reboot the Demolition Man movie. Lots of potential modern political satire. Lol. And I doubt Notre Dame was an accident. Haha. Well, I'm sure they're gonna reboot the Demolition Man movie for sure.
I think I've heard that there is some plan,
Sequel.
and it's more than I think.
Yeah, I seem to remember that too.
I think Sylvester Stallone announced there's going to be a sequel, not a reboot.
Right,
which
right.
means it's gonna be more modern politics.
It's going to be Ghostbuster 2016. Sylvester Stallone is going to show up like a cameo in 5 seconds.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? I'll watch it, I guess, but it
And
doesn't need a sequel.
No.
And of course, you're not going to have Nigel Hawthorne. He was the one who played the leader, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Cocteau.
Dr. Cocteau, yeah, exactly.
Because he was the chap who famously played the civil servant who always had an official answer for everything in the British sitcom Yes Minister.
Okay. I always whenever I see him, I always think of like some Roman drama or something. Was he ever in any of those?
I don't recall him being in a Roman drama.
Like maybe I Claudius or something.
I was just thinking. I don't know whether he was an I Claudius. He would have been
Claudius.
the right.
There we go.
He would have been the right vintage for that, I guess. But I don't know whether he was in it.
It's just a mind. It's just a image in my mind that I get, but it could be completely wrong.
He had one brief appearance in one episode of Dad's Army, so he does go back quite a while.
Right.
But yes, I mean he was kind of wonderful as this kind of how should I say, this figure of officialdom in Demolition Man, who kind of has the appropriate politically correct view for everything.
Yeah, but his character died in the first movie anyway, so he wouldn't be in the sequel even if he was still around.
Well, yes, if it's a sequel rather than a remake, then yes.
Yeah, if it's a remake, they could just get like a different.
Well, I mean, they could do
actor altogether.
They could get Paul Feig and do it with all women.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll bring like Sandra Bullock back and Wesley Snipes. Well, no, his character's dead.
Well, he's super dead. He got his head crushed, or frozen and then crushed.
But he could come back as like
well, I mean, if we're going the fucking Alien 4 route, sure, they could make a clone.
Yeah, or they could just have him kind of be on like television or something. Like put his face up as like world's #1 criminal.
No, he could be Che Guevara in that world.
Yeah, they're all wearing t-shirts. All the bad guys are following in his footsteps.
Yeah.
If they get Sylvester Stallone in again, you would then have to wonder how bone-crunchingly brutal this particular episode is going to be.
Yeah.
Well, it's never going to be anywhere close to the original.
The gore count in recent Stallone movies has upped significantly to earlier versions, hasn't it?
I did watch the newest Rambo movie, and
yeah, I don't know if it was. I think that one is tamer than before.
Got a lot of blood in it, but the problem is that it was a decent movie, like a good revenge flick.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't Rambo. Like Rambo's who you call to like wipe out an army of people with a toothpick. When a girl,
hold on, Ismoff Ishness in the chat. Demolition ma'am.
Yeah, Demolition ma'am. It's ma'am.
That's priceless.
But that's why the movie felt off, because like when a girl gets stolen and sold into sex slavery by Mexican cartel, you call Liam Neeson. You don't call Rambo.
True enough.
Right.
That's true. It felt more like a Taken movie, where it was all about kind of revenge for them taking his surrogate daughter, and she dies, and he ends up going after him and killing him. And it felt more like a revenge kind of Taken film Whereas Rambo's supposed to be like drop his ass in the jungle and have him wipe out like 300 people.
Right.
Like that's Rambo. So it didn't feel like John Rambo, but it was still a decent like action revenge.
Well,
flick,
they made a similar thing once with James Bond, didn't they? I think it was Roger Dalton,
Yeah.
whose James Bond got completely, his career got screwed because they turned one of the episodes into sort of a complete revenge film. And you just thought, what has this still got to do with James Bond?
Which one is that?
I'm trying to think. Was it License to Kill? I'm not sure.
I think so. I think it was License.
But I don't think I don't think his name was Roger Dalton.
No, it's Timothy Dalton.
Timothy Dalton. Right, there you go.
Roger Dalton. Yes, sorry. That's
Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton.
Yeah. Something felt off.
Yes, indeed. Well corrected.
Side note, I'd like to say Timothy Dalton was so fucking awesome in Hot Fuzz. He was he was like the I don't want to say he was the mayor. He was the he was the owner of the supermarket.
Supermarché, not supermarket.
The
the manager of the local supermarché. Yes.
And when he like impales his chin on that fucking church steeple in the model town, and he's not dead. He's like, oh, so much.
This really hurts. Yes,
this really hurts. I just thought that was so funny. Timothy Dalton's actually a really good actor. One of my favorite movies was kind of a romantic comedy of his. Was called The Beautician and the Beast. Had that one annoying woman in it, but it was kind of a Anna and the King kind of storyteller where like this New Jersey girl with like big hair, she's like works at a beauty salon, ends up marrying like a communist dictator of like she goes to they hire an American to teach his kids or something, and she goes over there and falls in love with him, and he's like a Stalinist. He has like the mustache and the military outfit. It's actually really funny. Like she's annoying, but Timothy Dalton's really hilarious in it. I don't know if you guys ever saw that movie.
No,
I'm just looking at some shots of it. It does look rather promising. Yes.
Yes, it's Timothy Dalton with a Stalin mustache. It was Fran Drescher, if I remember right.
It has touches of what was that film with Marilyn Monroe and Sir Laurence Olivier as the Eastern European potentate? Does that ring a bell with anybody, or am I showing my vintage again?
That might be a little too old.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I've watched some classic films back in those days, but I don't think I've ever really watched a Marilyn Monroe film, to be honest with you.
Well, what can I say? Yes, even though it does, I think, pass Undoom's test. It's not a black and white movie.
Okay, well, there's that.
At least
I believe that is one of your hard and fast rules, isn't it?
It is very hard for me to get into black and white movies, yes. And there is also like, that's a nice sort of cutoff there. But even further than that, there is a time after from whatever it was in the 50s, they got color, and then up to about somewhere in the 60s where they started to figure out, we're not actually playing to the back of the row. We're not on a stage. We can actually have subtle acting. That was also a nice point, I think, in cinema history, that from that point on, I can enjoy movies fully.
When it's a little less theatrical.
Yeah, I don't like it when they act like stage actors. You know what I mean?
The older films, I do like some of the older films because of the character actors of the time were very much stage, but they were so fun to watch that it's okay that it's an old movie, like the old Cat.
Yeah, but then it's kind of like watching a Jim Carrey movie. That has its place. Sure.
But I mean, it's also supposed to be serious, but at the same time, it's turned into funny because they took it so seriously. So like those old Cagney films where he's like, "Yeah, see, I'm gonna get my Tommy gun. See, how dare you talk to me like that, you dame?" Slaps her across the face. It's fucking hilarious.
Well, yes, but I don't think one could sort of say Humphrey Bogart or whatever was very sort of theatrical.
He was particularly kind of subtle. He was kind of like a handsome face of Hollywood.
And then you also sort of had, what is it, Spencer Tracy. So there were folks about already, in black and white films.
Sure, but that wasn't really what was encouraged by the directors, though. Right. So even if there were people who saw that as a good thing, it wasn't really sought after. And I'm sure they had to fight tooth and nail to get it to get to act that way if they were able to do that.
Well, yeah, they were very much actors, kind of like in the vein of Pacino and De Niro, where they're just Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in every movie. That's who they are. But
right.
The idea of method acting didn't come about until a little later on in Hollywood.
Oh yes, yes. There's that wonderful quote, that wonderful quotation. Laurence Olivier and Dustin Hoffman in The Marathon Man, and because Dustin Hoffman's character is this long distance runner, Dustin Hoffman went long distance running, so he would always arrive on set completely shattered, having been running again. Covered in sweat. And Laurence Olivier, who of course was very old school, kind of looked at him and went, why, my dear boy, why are you running around like a lunatic? Oh, well, you see, it's the method. You have to do what the character does in the film. And Laurence Olivier just looked at him and went, well, why don't you just act?
Right.
What if the character has to die?
But could you imagine,
imagine from that moment onward, Dustin Hoffman did not get on well with Laurence Olivier for the rest of the
movie.
Before you continue, got a super chat from Dr. Litch. Says, if you could bring back any old world tradition, what would it be? I'd bring back dueling, 10 paces and shoot.
with single shot.
With muskets.
But you need the correct pistols for that. Because if you do it with modern pistols, everybody dies.
Right, but what would you suggest then?
Well, as I say, you would need the old sort of flintlocks or clockwork pistols. Because
single shot black powder.
Right, right.
The reason they were, the reason dueling was so popular in a way was because there was a very good chance that both would actually survive, and that therefore honor had been served. One might be wounded, or none of them might be wounded at all. But the fact that they had been willing, they'd been prepared to face death, meant that they had done the honorable thing, and they could therefore walk away. But if you actually have modern precision weapons, everybody dies.
Pretty much. That would be pretty pointless.
Can you imagine, like, AR-15s? 1, 2, 3, get to 10. Turn, fire!
Well, I mean, you wouldn't even need to do that. You could just simply have, modern, revolvers.
A rifled barrel is what the problem is.
Either side, either of them kind of just takes a stance, grips their pistol with two hands, aims it at the head of the other guy, and then they both pull at the same time, and they're both dead.
Right, right.
When you had like modern rifling inside the barrel, so that it puts a spin on the projectile and it can shoot straighter and farther with more accuracy, you started getting more like the Wild West duels, where it wouldn't be 10 paces; they'd be on each end of the street, hoping not to get hit.
Yes, I think particularly sort of the old, sort of those British-made, because dare I say, when it came to dueling pistols, apparently the British made the finest ones. They were rifled, but they were just still nonetheless nowhere near precise enough, given that you put a little ball down the barrel, if you know what I mean. And therefore, there was always a very good chance that you would miss, or that even if you aim for the heart, you'll catch his shoulder or something like that. Because let's face it, these were in a way the best educated, the folks who were dueling with pistols were the aristocrats of their day. They were the best educated folk. They were among the population more than likely the ones who were best at working out the odds of surviving something.
Right.
So they would, in a way, be and also they were the ones who had most to lose, if you think of it. So they wouldn't be daft enough to put themselves in front of something that was guaranteed to end in their death.
I would bring back medieval castle sieges as a sport.
Yes.
As a sport?
Hear me out. Okay, because we have technology now. We have drones that can have cameras on them.
Mm-hmm.
What we do is we get like 800 acres of land, right? And we build these nice stadium enclosure that has a castle on each end of it. And we get entire armies of people with trebuchets and crossbows, and we just let them siege each other's castles, and we film it all using drones.
You're talking like a reality show?
That's what it's a live gladiatorial event with castle sieges. just get all the criminals, put them on the
the running man. The running man.
Yeah. just empty our prisons and get them to choose their weapons, go out and defend their castles.
Have you ever heard of the naumachia?
Yeah, I would. No, I just before we get into that, I just want to say that can we just bring back traditions from the past future? Then I'll agree. Let's bring back the running man. But anyway, go ahead, Britisher.
Well, the naumachia, they were kind of Roman games. So they would, in their circuses, they would literally flood the arena, and they would have sort of very shallow bottom mock-up ships, and they would kind of send the criminals to be the various crews on these floating ships in the arenas to fight each other to the death in a mock-up of ancient battles.
Right.
So that comes pretty close to what Magog is talking about here. So the Romans were already there.
Well, I'm just totally amazed that they were able to do that, logistically, and just get all that water in and out, and fucking hell,
they were a clever lot.
Yeah.
What's it called? The Trevi Fountain in Rome. I'm assuming you know which one I mean. The very posh, the Trevi Fountain. It's kind of almost like sort of the side of a building, and it's full of beautiful Baroque statuary. It's the one that people throw the coin into.
Oh, right.
The Trevi Fountain, the water that feeds the Trevi Fountain is actually the Aqua Iulia. It is the Roman aqueduct that once fed one of their public baths.
That's pretty cool.
The public bath is long gone, but the water supply is still going.
Right. That's pretty cool.
So obviously, sort of in Renaissance Rome, they decided, well, we've got all this water. Why don't we make a posh ornamental fountain out of it?
Yeah.
So yes, they were good with hydraulics. They knew their stuff with water. So if anybody was able to make circuses where you could flood the arena, it would be the Romans.
Yeah, that's true. But
if I remember right, the Trevi Fountain was the architect of it was Salvi, right?
I really don't know.
Salvi.
Yes, you've bested me there with the factoid, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Nicolas Salvi started it, and I think it was completed by Panini. So it's a very Baroque fountain, very much in the vein of like Bernini.
Yes, I mean Bernini was the kind of star in Rome. There is, on one of the squares where he built, he made a fountain. There is a saying, there is this little legend that they've got the various figures set on the fountain. This is on the Piazza Navona, and there is one figure that seems to kind of be turning away in disgust. And what it is the church that is right in front of that particular figure that's turning away was built by one of Bernini's rivals. Now, people
Yes.
will say, well, the church wasn't actually there when the fountain was built. That's true. But the commission had already been given. So he knew that his rival was building a church there. So he already had one of the figures on the fountain turn away, as in, oh, good God, look at that thing. So, yes, you have to grant it him. He was that good that he could
Yeah.
even take the mickey with his statuary.
Yeah. Bernini did a lot in his time as an artist. It's so amazing how many fucking statues he carved and
Well,
buildings he built in his lifetime.
he had every single sculptor in Rome in his employ.
Yes.
So what he did is he had the sculptors rough out the statues, and then he did the rest.
He did the finishing, yeah.
Because otherwise, given how much the man produced, it would just simply have been impossible. No human being could have made that much statue.
No, I'm not saying that he did every single statue.
Oh no. Just I'm just sort of supplying additional.
When was this thing finished?
The fountain?
Yeah.
Oh, Trevi Fountain was finished in God.
Well, the Baroque is largely the 17th century.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
1732, something like that. 1730s.
Right.
Yeah. It's,
just getting a time frame for it there.
I just looked it up. It was finished by Panini in 1762.
Okay.
But it was started in the 1730s. Bernini was actually asked, and he did the sketches, but then the Pope died, and Bernini lost the project.
Yes.
And then it was eventually finished. It was started up again by Salvi. And then Salvi died in 1751, and it was finished by Panini in 62. So.
Because there were all these rivalries between the families that would become popes, if you know what I mean. They also were patrons of different artists. So the moment the Pope changed and a rival family came to power, they chucked the artists and got someone else.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is this.
Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Super chat. Ghost Dog 999 says sawed off shotgun at 20 yards. Let's make it funny and let's make money. Well.
Yep.
That might be minced meat. Would be the term.
Yeah, I could well imagine. Or if you load the sawn-off shotguns with salt grains just to make it, to put some sting into it.
Yeah,
perhaps less lethal. But
yeah, we've been
less lethal.
Yeah, we've been over that before in the previous stream.
That's why there's nut everywhere.
Just coming back to the Bernini thing, there's another sort of wonderful little story. You never quite know how true these things are, but with there being a pope in power, with whom he was in disfavor, that very fountain I was talking about, where the figure is turning away, that's one of his masterpieces. And what happened was he was out of favor with the papacy. And the papacy was asking for commissions, so there wasn't really any point of his even submitting anything because he had the wrong name. He was the protege of a previous pope. So various artists submitted ideas, and the pope wasn't really convinced. He sort of thought, no, this is all rather mediocre, and therefore some of the cardinals who were still in with Bernini said to him, look, provide us a mock-up of what you want to do. We'll get it into the palace and we'll make sure the Pope sees it. So what they did is, while the Pope was sleeping, they put it on a table in one of his antechambers and covered it with a cloth and then just left it. So the Pope got up the next day, came out, saw this cloth covering something on a table, pulled it off and went, now that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Who is this? And that's when they had to tell him, I'm sorry, but this is one of the men you don't like. This is Bernini. But of course, because he had already committed himself to saying he loved it, he then had to give the commission.
Yeah. They did all kinds of shit like that. He should have pulled the cloth off and been like, the flowers are still standing.
All right,
Nothing like a Ghostbusters reference.
Got another super chat from Dr. Lich. Thank you very much. He says, I'm betting big bucks on God Emperor Trump writing a sequel to The Art of the Deal. It shall be named The Art of the Deal Volume 2 Presidential Edition, after finishing his second term, of course.
Yeah, even with all this shit going on, I still don't see how Biden beats Trump.
I don't really understand how they could have ended up with him as the
goddamn Karens.
Well, the reason they've ended up with Biden was because they just simply couldn't go with Bernie Sanders.
Well, I know the details, but come on.
The question is more, how did those two end up the only options?
I did come up with a Biden slogan for his presidential campaign, and I hope somebody's listening that works for Biden's presidential campaign, because I think this would be really good for him.
Mm-hmm.
I think his slogan should be, vote for Biden. He can sniff out corruption.
Sniff. Okay.
I have the nose for it, yes.
Yeah. The nose knows.
But no, I think had things played out slightly differently, I think we would be talking a completely different story. Think of it like this. When you have presidents whose first term is fairly successful, when they stand again, sort of historically, you tend not really to remember who even opposed them.
Right.
Who stood against Reagan the second time round?
Mondale, maybe? I don't know.
Dukakis, I think.
That's when you sort of really kind of you're kind of scratching your head going, who was it? Because the A team don't put their names forward, because they just say, look, if you want to stand for president, you really only really get one chance. So you need to kind of make sure that when you're actually running, you stand a chance.
Sure.
If you're running against a second-term candidate who is very popular and things are going very well, you're a fool to throw away your one chance. And that's why I think any strong candidates who kind of hope to get somewhere, they didn't put their names forward this time around, because Trump was sitting on the lowest unemployment rate in living memory, really. Everything was coming up roses. And then the COVID thing happened.
Yeah.
And I think had that happened before, I think stronger Democrat candidates would have come to the fore. And then you wouldn't have ended up with Bernie Sanders yet again and Joe Biden 15 years too late. So I think it just basically, it's a sort of strange sequence of events that has led to this. The Democrat Party clearly didn't want Biden under any circumstance, because they had just seen what had happened to Jeremy Corbyn in Britain. So
I think Biden was the choice of the DNC.
Yes, yeah. No, undoubtedly, because they saw what had happened in the UK, where the kind of old-style leftism from several decades ago, which some people had kind of kidded themselves after the first election here between Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May. They kind of said to themselves, well, you see, it still stands a chance. You can still get somewhere with this. He's on the up. No sooner was he actually facing a decent candidate and not Theresa May, he was completely obliterated and lost in a landslide. And that's when I think in the US, alarm bells started ringing in the Democrat Party, because they looked at it and went, hang on a moment, Bernie Sanders is the US equivalent of Jeremy Corbyn. If we run with him, not only are we going to lose, because we're more than likely going to lose anyway, but we're going to lose so badly that we're going to be possibly annihilated, not just in the presidential election, but in the congressional votes.
Well, I don't think they needed Corbyn to realize that, though.
I think it would have. I think it will have helped a great deal. I think it will have sort of concentrated minds to kind of see an actual election result in an English-speaking country, which tends to sort of politically run fairly parallel with the US. You know, we take similar swings than you guys do. The US tends to be more right-wing than the Brits, but we tend to sort of veer left and right fairly simultaneously over the years, if you know what I mean. We follow a similar pattern, and therefore to suddenly see Bernie have a similar sort of support, very youthful, you know, very young, extremely sort of militant and energized support base, very much online, and that the parallels to Jeremy Corbyn were just everywhere. And a lot of the political pundits, you know, sort of what do they call them? The psephologists, the guys who do the polling and whatever. A lot of them work in Britain and in America, depending on where the election is happening. So a lot of the expertise is actually transatlantic. And therefore, I think some of those consultants to the Democrats will have just said, look, you know, in Britain, we've just seen the writing on the wall. This man has just been annihilated. You can't possibly run with Bernie, no matter what you want.
Right. Yeah.
Well, here in America, we also have this. The political divide is the worst than we've seen in quite a long time. And
oh, yes.
Yeah.
We have this idea now. We have this entire generation of people have this idea in their head that if they don't get what they want in an election, they can just fucking do anything they want to get rid of the guy they don't like fucking false allegations and investigations and impeachment proceedings and riots and fucking goddamn calling for some crazy shit that would be against their ideology 10 years ago, but they're totally for it now. You know, like
I don't know. Was it Josephus? I'm not sure. The historian who said about the Romans, you turn everything to desert and you call it peace. In this case, you could say you turn everything to desert and you call it resistance.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Suddenly, the opposition party of the person who won in 2016, Trump, was convinced that they are now members of a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's kind of dangerous politics. It's a dangerous base to build your politics on. You know, it's a dangerous foundation.
Yeah, that's not something you throw around lightly.
Yeah, a lot of them don't even have a plan for the future. A lot of them are just like, we're going to burn it all down and rebuild America. With what? With stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's just the basic concept, because we had a similar thing going on with the momentum movement within the Labour Party. So again, just with the Bernie bros, you know, a movement within a movement. So there was this much more militant, much more left-wing movement within the Labour Party that called itself Momentum. And they too just wouldn't accept election results. Oh, it was all because of this, it was all because of that. It was never because they'd actually lost, you know. And that's the basic of the sort of social contract in a democracy. You have to be prepared to lose.
Now and again.
Well, of course.
But this is what we're faced with. We're faced with a group that isn't prepared to lose. So they lose, and therefore they then, you know, go about sabotaging the government that came in.
Well, the thing is, I hope this doesn't just swing around if Trump loses and it becomes the exact same thing with the other side.
It will.
Yeah,
it'll be conservatives' turn to impeach the next Democrat president and launch false allegations and investigations and shit.
Yeah, that would piss me off. If they're going to be just as crazy, that would piss me off. So, fuck's sake, just keep yourself in line.
it would be. I understand what Magog means because yes, politics is politics, but there would be an element of hypocrisy to it, and therefore it would be harder to sell to one's own supporters because there would be ample examples of one being on record complaining about this very thing.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that'll stop them.
Yes, yeah, because politicians will always politic. Yes.
Yes.
But I think, particularly when it comes to some of the things we've just been seeing in the US, um, it's getting pretty close to the bone. I mean, as no doubt people will have realized, I always like referring back to examples in the past, particularly the Roman Empire. But yes, there was a politician called Claudius who effectively organized street mobs on the Roman streets.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, he absolutely sort of, terrorized the entire political situation. I mean, people will have heard of Cicero, one of the great politicians. Cicero was forced to flee into exile because Claudius wanted him dead. And Claudius's mob destroyed Cicero's personal house in the city. And
Right.
Claudius had it dedicated as a temple so that Cicero, should he ever come back, would not be able to build there again.
Right.
So, and he just, if people got in his way, he had them beaten to death by his mob. So they more than likely had stacks of bricks standing around randomly on street corners. But it kind of shows you, in the end, what needed to happen back then was the legions needed to come into the street. And funnily enough, it wasn't a coup. And it wasn't the Nazis taking over. It was basically, okay, this needs to stop now. And in the end, we are stronger than you are. And we will restore order. And, to hell with you. And in the end, just as an aside, Cicero had his house rebuilt at public expense. They paid for it. They kind of realized that, yes, this had been somewhat of a dark chapter. And the poor bloke didn't really deserve it. Yes.
Right. Yeah, I think this harkens back to what we were talking about on the other stream. Magog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, we covered a lot of this on the first 2 hours.
If I'm covering ground that has already been done.
Yeah, it's pretty much what you made a nice allegory there with the Romans, but that's pretty much what we were talking about that on that stream, all that depressing stuff that's going on right now.
Well, there is a nice little touch to it, which might amuse a few people.
Okay.
In order to basically just survive the situation, the conservative forces in Rome needed to create their own street gangs. It was run by a chap called Milo.
Okay.
And it was largely made up. I mean, let's think of it. If modern-day Milo would get to make up his street gang, it was largely made up of gladiators.
Of course it was.
I don't know whether they were oiled gladiators, but hey.
You know they were. They were all lathered up.
In the end, Milo won because there was a coming together, and Claudius came out of it dead. And I don't think there were too many people other than his street gangs that mourned his passing.
Yeah, when your first political idea against your opposition is to just put on masks and hit the streets and punch people and burn things down, you're gonna eventually lose because you have no real plan. Even if you won the revolution and you took over the government and changed everything, what are you going to change it to?
Yeah, you're like the dog that finally catches up with the ambulance. Now what?
Right. Now what? Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
the history of revolutions is not a good one.
No.
If you look at what most often happens with revolutions, it's never the people in the masks doing the street fighting who eventually inherit power. And
No.
whoever it is who eventually does get power, the first thing that person wants rid of is the people in the masks. The very people he knows who can overthrow him from power.
Yep. They're
Yeah.
the fucking dog soldiers of the left, and they think they're going to inherit a kingdom. They're not. they're not.
No, of course not. They're first. They'd be the first to go.
Yeah, it happened. It happened in Russia too. I mean, they overthrew the royal family in the empire and killed everybody, and then they were like, "Hey, the proletariat has inherited the country. What are we going to do first? Get the farmers next. Get the farmers. They know how to grow all the food. I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
Get the farmers."
that is a sad story.
You just look at some of the people who were part of the, revolutionary elite, the Trotskys of this world and whatever, who then suddenly get airbrushed out of the imagery.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, there is that famous Stalin picture, isn't there?
I know. I must say, hold on. I must say, I'm really impressed with their ability to airbrush back in the day.
Never underestimate people who are determined. Yes.
Yeah, never underestimate people who have a gun to their head, I guess. But holy shit, that's some serious photoshopping with no Photoshop.
Do a lot. You can do a lot with paints and rephotographing an existing photograph if you have a gun to your head.
Oh yeah. That is impressive as shit. I've seen those photos. Like, unbelievable.
Them poor people, all they wanted was shoes. And then after the revolution, they still didn't get any shoes.
Yeah. Didn't get
I
visited the revolution and all I got was this T-shirt.
Or they got lots of left foot shoes from the left foot shoe factory. But for some reason, the supplies had failed in the right foot shoe factory. And yes, that tends to be the way these things work. Did you ever hear about this? Sorry, just had a bit of a brainwave there. This was somewhere in the last 1 or 2 years that somebody started, shoplifting lots and lots of shoes. I think it was in Denmark. And then it turned out that there was also an incredible amount of shoes being stolen. In those displays they have outside shoe shops. And it's only just one shoe. So, no one steals them because there's no point in stealing them.
Right.
And then it turned out that somebody was also stealing lots and lots of shoes in Sweden.
Okay.
And at some point, someone put 2 and 2 together. In Sweden, they put the other shoe. They put they I don't know, it's the left or the right. They put, say, the left shoe out. And in Denmark, they put the right shoe out. And there is a bridge connecting the 2 of them.
Right.
So some of them was just someone was stealing this stuff by the bucket load, just basically pulling up with a van and just putting the whole display in the van and driving off. And yes, it was because they were doing the same thing in both neighboring countries and then matching the pairs.
Well, at least that's more thought put into it than they usually do.
I mean, you have to grant it to them sometimes that sometimes you kind of almost have a certain amount of grudging respect for some criminals because at least they put some gray matter into it.
Right. That's better than nothing.
I mean, here in Britain in particular, we've got a certain there is almost a kind of tradition for liking for the population kind of admiring sort of very elaborate and sort of great heists. Where, I mean, just again in recent years here, there was that diamond theft, where in the the Jewish quarter in London, where all the jewelers are, there was a vault. It wasn't attached to a bank. It was a private vault service, and they had somehow some gang had got wind of the fact that this, in the vault, it was old-fashioned concrete, so it wasn't reinforced in the way it would be today, and that therefore with modern machinery you could grind through it. And they realized that there was a particular weekend, which first it was Easter weekend, and right after that it was also sort of 2 Jewish holidays, I think, right after each other.
Right.
So it ended up being a period of 4 or 5 days in which that vault would be completely left alone. So all the jewelers tended to put a lot of their wares in that particular vault and then leave it there. So it was there for safekeeping. Well, these guys broke in, abseiled down the lift shaft, managed to grind their way through a concrete wall about 1 meter or more, so 3 or 4 feet thick, get into the vault and steal a huge haul of diamonds and make off with it. Eventually, due to some shortcomings in the plot, they did manage to find these guys. And here's the best bit: except for, I think, one of them, all of them were of pensioner age. So these were these were old age pensioners abseiling down the lift shaft.
That's like some sort of Hollywood movie.
It's fantastic. Can you imagine when those guys were sent to prison? You know how you hear in prison society, you have to make way for the big guy coming down the landing and whatever. Well, I do a bet everybody made way for them. They would have been seen as the kind of aristocracy of crime.
Maybe.
Yeah, I have no idea how it works in prison, or it's just the biggest, baddest guy that will kill you if you don't do what he says. I have no idea.
Never spent time in prison, so I don't know if the movies are right or not.
I have no idea.
Here, but over here we have got a tradition of people coming up with sort of fantastical heists. I mean, back in the 60s, we had the great train robbery. We've had what was it called? Branks. Oh, God, I can't think of the name anymore. It's something at an airport, a bit like the Lufthansa heist in America. We've had some really sort of unbelievable capos,
right?
And there is a how should we say? There's almost a kind of a pride nationally that our criminals seem to be the ones that kind of go that little bit further and become these kind of gentlemen criminals who seek to make off with tens of millions.
Damn, you're really damning the UK with faint praise, aren't you?
Well, it's, how should we say, they don't try and hold up a local bank branch. They kind of think, okay, how do we make away with 100 million? That kind of attitude. But if you're already breaking the law, at least make it worthwhile.
I pulled up a list of some of the strangest things that ever been stolen.
All right, before you get into that, Dr. Litch has a super chat. Says, I bet Keanu Reeves is a closeted libertarian.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I could see that. Sure.
All I can say to that is be excellent to each other. Party dudes.
Yeah.
He definitely loves his guns.
Yeah.
One of the strangest things that was ever stolen, according to this list, was Einstein's brain. Apparently, when Einstein died in 1955, the family removed the brain, or somebody removed the Thomas Harvey, the doctor on call, removed the brain without the family's permission so he could do scientific research on the brain of a genius. He kept the jar with Einstein's brain in it in a beer cooler for more than 2 decades until a reporter found out and reported on it.
Fantastic.
I've
I
heard
love that.
others. I've heard other stories about that, though. I'm not sure that's true.
Somebody stole a beach.
A beach.
A beach.
Okay. Is it basically the sand from the beach?
Yeah, Jamaica's Coral Spring Resort has really nice sand. It's world famous. And thieves made off with 500 truckloads worth of sand in 2008. And they sold to competing hotels.
Okay.
I can already see the bidding war. The bidding war
right?
among the hotels, as in, we have sand. Okay, how much do you want for our sand?
How much is it worth to you? Holy shit.
And the next day they come round and demand to be put on a retainer because you wouldn't want your new sand to disappear now, would you?
Yeah, if they're going to do that, go ahead.
Only if they steal it once, they would steal it several times, surely.
Here's a good one. It was bad enough that thieves took jewelry and an iron during a break-in of Margaret Wells' home in England in 2011. But one of the biggest shocks was that the life-size statue her daughter had made of E.T. the Extraterrestrial had been taken. Thankfully, E.T. did phone home eventually. Emergency responders were called to rescue a body floating in the river, only to discover that it was the missing alien.
Oh my God, did she do that in plastic or something?
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, when you hear about some daughter doing some shit, you figure out it's just puppy or mushy or something. But that wouldn't hold up in the river.
Well, of course, there was once that incident in 1966 when the World Cup went missing. You know, that sporting event of which the US, by and large, is not really that interested, and yet the entire rest of the world goes
some soccer shit
about it.
Yeah,
yes.
Soccer shit.
So there is. So this is effectively, given how many nations vie for this thing, this is the most sought after sports trophy on the planet. And in 1966, when it was when the World Cup was being staged in Britain, someone nabbed it and it disappeared. And the Scotland Yard were on the job, as in, hang on a moment, where is the world's most sought after sports trophy that just so happens to be made of solid gold?
Yeah.
Where is this thing?
Let's not forget that it's made of solid gold.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that changes everything right there.
Then, believe it or not, it turned up again. A boy is reported to have found it in a hedge. So. Okay. There are all sorts of theories, as in, one feared that the guys who had nicked it must have come to fear, hang on a moment, this thing is too hot. The police, they don't just want this, they really want this. And if need be, they'll start breaking bones to get this thing, On the other hand, of course, those are the days when we still had sort of proper East End gangsters, sort of kind of, the British version, the Cockney version of mafia. I know this must sound terribly unthreatening to the US, but trust me, they were tough people.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the theory that effectively the East End gangsters, who like their football, said, this thing turns back up or else. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, finish your.
No. It seems that perhaps a bit like the reasons why no one brings drugs into Japan. They're more afraid of the Yakuza than of the actual authorities. It could well be that whoever had stolen it, kind of realized, oh, we're in deep here, and we're actually more afraid of the East End gangsters. Of the crime networks than we are of the police, and therefore, look, just stick it somewhere where someone will find it, and once they have it back, no one will ask any questions, and we're off scot-free.
Yeah, chuck it into a hedge and get the fuck out.
Right, that makes sense.
Here's an interesting one before I close this list down, because some of them on this list are stupid, but this one's interesting. This one might interest you, Unduped. Mm-hmm. An employee of NASA stole a $20,000 RL-10 rocket engine. He stole it from NASA, but he got caught when he tried to sell it online. When he tried to sell it on eBay. He tried to sell a massive rocket engine.
Well, actually, I know that there have been some NASA employees that have stolen moon fragments and shit and tried to sell them, and that's under the purview of the Secret Service, and they get nailed hard immediately.
Oh yeah.
But I don't even understand how that works. A rocket engine? Those things are fucking big as a house.
How the hell did he get it out of NASA?
Yeah.
He must have been.
You can't just blame him for that. You got to blame security a little bit there too. Like, how do you not see a rocket engine leaving your fucking facility?
He must have been using a lorry, what you guys call a truck. There's no other way. I mean, you have to have a huge trailer.
Yeah.
And you have to lift this thing onto it with a crane. There is no way. I mean, unless I'm completely misunderstanding this thing, but I would assume, this is something, half the size of a house.
No, this is according to the picture, it's a rocket engine, but it's for like a probe. It's not like a full size, rocket booster.
Okay.
It's not a full size rocket booster, and I mean, don't get me wrong, you'd still need a pallet to put it on, but. Given that he worked there, he probably, security probably didn't even ask him any questions. He was probably like, hey, I'm moving this over to this storage unit. And they're just like, he worked there. They probably knew who he was, thought he was doing some official work. And he just drove off with the fucker. That's probably what happened.
I guess. But still.
He just got to the exit and says, I'm moving it to the other site.
Right.
He just kept on going, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you got to put some blame on the security there. Jesus.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories of a famous theft was when actor Nicolas Cage's house was robbed, and they stole a bunch of his shit out of his safe. Well, one of the things they stole, because Nicolas Cage is well known for being a radical Superman fan, was his #1 issue of Action Comics from 1933, 32, 33. So we're talking about the first appearance of Superman.
Yes, this would be worth a lot of money, I'm assuming.
A lot of money, because a lot of them didn't survive either. Kids back then, they tore up their comic books. They rolled them up, put them in their pockets, all kinds of shit. So, but this was it was like a 9.8 grade, so it was pretty good condition. Well, it disappeared. They never caught who robbed Nicolas Cage.
Mm-hmm.
And years later, after Nicolas Cage had already received his insurance money for what was stolen, including the comic book, a man in Florida bought a storage unit at auction. You know how they auction off storage units that stop getting paid on.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't let you look in it. They'll open the door, and you can visually look before you bid. And he looked through the cabinets. There was a bunch of furniture in there and stuff, and he bought it for $800, this storage unit. And he looked in the cabinets, and one of the drawers of an old dresser had the Nicolas Cage Action Comics #1 in it.
And that's why they arrested him for receiving stolen goods.
No, because the insurance already paid out. Nicolas Cage could not claim that it was his any longer. So because the man bought the storage unit legally, he got Action Comics #1.
He actually got it.
And he actually got it, and he sent it to auction. Nicolas Cage tried to bid on it again, but he lost. But the man, for $800 storage unit, got $1.5 million for Action Comics #1.
Ooh, that's a sweet story.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Yes, that's not bad at all.
So Nicolas Cage underbid. He bid like $1.2 million, and he lost to somebody who bought it for $1.5. And so the guy who got a storage unit for $800 ended up with $1.5 million for selling the Action Comics #1.
Yeah, once in a while you hear about a story
can
like
just
that.
Imagine how pissed Nicolas Cage was.
Yeah. Oh, he was
Holy
probably
shit.
very angry. I mean, Nicolas Cage is a diehard fan of Superman. He even named his son Kal-El.
Then again, at
Really?
least he got the
Yes.
money.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Nicolas Cage got the money from the insurance, right?
Yeah,
But
sure, But obviously, he didn't care about the money that much. He wanted to buy it back once again. So it was important to him.
James Andrew Morrison in the chat asked, "How did they know it was the Nicolas Cage comic?" Because every existing issue of Action Comics #1, it has the serial numbers, the print number is recorded.
Yeah.
Because there's not that many. There really isn't. You can't just go out and get an original print of Action Comics #1 anymore. There were only back then. The comic book industry wasn't that big, and so there weren't that many printed to begin with. Right. We're talking issue #1 of Action Comics, which featured Superman, and this shit was like maybe like 100,000 copies worldwide printed, and how many of them were destroyed? And so there's only like a few hundred of them in existence that are of any good value that have that are kept well.
I would doubt there's even 100. I could well imagine you're looking at fewer than a dozen.
Yeah, right. Let me Google it. How many?
I mean, it must be a bit like, sort of penny black stamps or blue Mauritius or things like that, where there's just a tiny handful of those, first ever postage stamps around. So they're that well documented that they're fairly easily recognizable.
It's in the hundreds.
Oh, it
Action
is.
Action Comics #1. Yeah, Action Comics #1, original publish. Wait, no, that's republish. 52 issues.
52. That's still nonetheless much more than I would have thought. I mean, given that these were comics that were clearly bought by kids, I'm surprised that 52 have survived.
The 1938 comic in pristine order. See, if it's under a certain grading, they don't even count it. So that 52 is only the 52 that are registered like 9.8 and higher, like pristine condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most valuable comics of all time. The most recent one being sold on eBay for $3.2 million.
Oh my God!
There is something wrong with these people.
That's too much. That's too much.
Yeah. But they knew it was Nicolas Cage's because when you register a comic book that valuable with an insurance company, they mark the print number.
Mm-hmm.
Each issue had a different print number because it's just like printing a book, right? So they know which ones belong to which collectors who have bought them and registered them with insurance company. So that's how they knew. They looked at the number inside and they were like, "Oh, yeah." I'm
kind of surprised. I'm surprised that there isn't some sort of provision in the law to sort of make sure that if it turns up, it's a property of the insurance company when they already paid out, right?
There might be, but there's like a time limit on it, right? Mm-hmm. And you got to understand that it was found in that storage unit years later.
Right.
Yeah, many, many, many years later.
So like Nicolas Cage limitations on the whole thing.
Yeah.
If 10 years go by, it's whoever finds it.
Yeah, like Nicolas Cage bought that comic book at auction at like the height of his career in like the 90s. So when it was finally found in like in like 2008,
I could imagine it would make a difference if the person who had stole it was still alive and they had found it on him. So then it's actually the thief who has it.
Right.
Then I could well imagine that it might be returned either to Cage, who then has to pay the money back, or to the insurance company.
Right.
But given that this chap bought it in completely good faith, without even knowing he was buying it, I would say yes, then there could well be some rule whereby, look, if 10 years have gone by, this is
well, yeah, obviously that's what happened. It's just
I found the article. The actor's fabled copy of Action Comics #1, which was stolen from his house in 2000 and found in a storage locker in April, sells for $2.161 Sorry, so I got that money wrong. The guy actually got over $2 million for it. It's the first comic book to ever be sold for over $2 million. And it was recovered when an unidentified man bought the contents of an abandoned South California storage locker. Few comics have as interesting or complicated backstory. Certified Guaranteed Company, the leading grader of quality collectible comics, recently assigned this copy of a grade 9.1, making it the highest publicly graded copy of Superman's first appearance. So not only was it Action Comics #1, it's the highest graded.
Well, I mean, that will obviously add to it, but I think the backstory which it now has, the fact that it was owned by a world-famous actor and stolen from him, it adds to the backstory of the whole thing.
That's
so
true.
I think that makes it yet more unique.
Yeah, probably.
And therefore, I could well imagine that further increases its value.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, here's interesting. I didn't know this about the story. The exact moment of theft is unknown because the comics had possibly been missing for a week before Cage discovered the frames were empty. And it's probably because he was like in another country filming a movie.
Yeah.
And wasn't at home.
Or if he has a very large home, with 3 dozen rooms, as some of these film stars have, there may be parts of the house he doesn't really visit that often.
Right. It was stolen in 2000. It was discovered in 2011, recovered in a San Fernando Valley storage locker. The man who found the comic had bought the contents of the abandoned locker for $800. Cage's publicist released a statement from the actor at the time calling the recovery of the comic divine providence and expressing hope that the heirloom will be returned to the family. Cage had received an insurance payment for the comic, but at the time expressed interest in reaching a settlement to regain ownership of the book. His missing Detective Comics #27 was never found. So there's still a Nicolas Cage Detective Comics #27 out there.
Still one out there.
That's the first appearance of Batman. Fischler would not confirm this is the Action Comics stolen from Cage, but the provenance of the comic was eventually, connected, right? And matched the history of the Cage comic. And the guy, instead of giving it back to Cage or agreeing to some sort of settlement, decided
he will have been very, very popular with Nicolas Cage, that chap.
Well, he was very popular with his bank account.
Right. Could you could you imagine be like, listen, Nicolas Cage, I don't need a lot in my life. You give me $250,000 and be my friend.
Do you really want Nicolas Cage as your friend?
Fuck yes, I do.
Be my very, very special friend.
Just like once a year, invite me to a barbecue, so I can, just one, we don't have to be besties in the whole world, but if you once a year, invite me to a barbecue so I can brag to my friends.
You see, the person with whom I would have been prepared to do such an arrangement is sadly no longer with us.
Right.
Why am I not surprised?
Because Hugh Hefner has already died.
That would be the barbecue party to go to.
That's the guy that you want to be friends with, right?
Yeah.
But what's great about this story is Action Comics #1 is the most sought after, most expensive comic in the world. There's not that many of them. There's less than 100 in existence, according to that article, and only about 52 of them are a high enough grade to even be considered worth a lot of money, right? But you gotta be go back in time. That comic book sold for 10 cents. 1938, 10 cents.
That's amazing. That's even better than Apple stock.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember hearing that theory but somebody did the numbers on it, and apparently if you, instead of buying the first Apple computer, bought Apple stock, you'd be a billionaire now.
Literal billionaire.
Yeah, literal.
If you bought enough stock. If you bought enough stock, you'd be a literal billionaire.
No, if you bought the equivalence of what the first computer cost.
Well, wasn't that in that Tom Hanks movie?
Well, they don't explain the math there, but yeah.
but
he bought some
he's
stock
ridiculously
in.
wealthy because
He,
somebody had invested into apples or something.
yeah,
Yes.
it was some fruit company, is what he
There you
says.
go.
But yeah, if you actually took the money that you would have spent on the first Apple computer and actually took that money and bought stock, you would have been a billionaire. So
Yeah, that is a worrying thought, isn't it?
I think when Apple stock went public, when they started selling common shares on the market, open market shares, I think it was like in the 80s, right?
Right.
And it was like, I think when it first hit the market, it was like 97 cents a share.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus, imagine what you'd have now.
Makes your eyes water, yes.
Yeah, imagine what you'd have now if you just took a couple $100 and just bought,
when it comes to that thing, I mentioned before that the backstory can make something more valuable. So that comic book is more than likely now more valuable due to having a connection to Nicolas Cage. There was that Dutch super forger. I hope I've not already told you this story, but there was this. I've just Googled him, that Han van Meegeren, and fantastic story. This is a guy who was so good at forging old masters. I think he was particularly good at Vermeer, if I'm not mistaken. That he couldn't just copy an existing painting, because if you copy a painting, there's two of them. Sooner or later, you're going to be found out. He instead was able to copy the style of the old masters, and he would do his research very thoroughly. So, for example, Vermeer tended to use the same room, the studio he had in the attic. So, of course, if you've looked at a few Vermeer pictures, you quickly begin to realize, where the window is. And there's this particular table that sometimes he's moved it there and sometimes he's moved it here. So he would then paint the room of Vermeer's in a Vermeer style. And he would, like that, create an altogether new Vermeer that would then be discovered. So in his official role was that he was an art dealer, a very, very well-connected art dealer who had connections to all the good houses in Holland, and therefore he would be able to get his hands on these masterpieces. Well, they were all fake. He was making them. The reason the whole thing eventually became so sensational was then, of course, the Nazis invaded. The Nazis took over his country. And the Nazis were robbing art from all over Europe. So it was only a matter of time until they came knocking on his door because he was this art dealer. Well, guess what? He sold the Nazis one forgery after the other. He did them proper, and these are the leading Nazis. These are Goering, Hitler, Goebbels. He was taking them for a song. But then, of course, the war ends. The Allies sweep in, the war ends, and this guy ends up in court because he's a collaborator. He has sold all these art treasures, the Dutch art treasures, to the Nazis, this swine. And it was only because he effectively, more than likely, will have faced the death penalty. Right in the aftermath of the war, the blood was up. They weren't going to show much mercy for some guy who had been in with Goebbels and Goering and whatever. So he eventually had to stand up in court and say, I didn't sell them any art treasures. They're all fake. Everything I've ever sold is fake. And what was so wonderful is he went into the courtroom, enemy number one in Holland. He came out of the courtroom, the national hero, the one guy who had
ripped off the Nazis.
he had led Goering by the nose, and they celebrated him ever since. What is now so remarkable is that his forgeries are now worth lots of money, simply because he is now such a famous name, even though he is a forger, or was a forger.
That's the most famous forger.
Because of the backstory, his paintings will fetch tens of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
So
Well,
they won't
makes
get
sense.
the tens of millions. They won't get the tens of millions of the great masters, but nonetheless, his paintings are worth a lot of money.
This
And
is
there is still the belief that there will be in many of the great museums of the world, there will still be some Van Meegerens about, because he was so good at it that he could fool the leading experts in the world, because he himself effectively had made himself a leading expert and was able to pull this stuff off.
Right.
But yes, the backstory eventually makes the object more valuable. So that's why I think with the Nicolas Cage story, given that comic book has now got it's not just rare like the other comic books, the other issues. It's also now got a further backstory of Nicolas Cage and a
it's got
theft and the incredible lucky find and I think that will add more to the value in the same way that this Van Meegeren chap, his forgeries are now suddenly worth small fortunes.
just like the missing detective number 27, Detective Comics, the first appearance
Yes.
of Batman. That's still out there somewhere.
I mean, it's like
it's the Nicolas Cage Detective Comics is out there somewhere.
It's like the Titanic.
Right.
Somewhere out there it is still around. Will it ever be found?
And here's the last one I want to do, because this one's fun too. Since we were talking about James Bond earlier, The Spy Who Loved Me, Roger Moore. There was a car in that movie called the Lotus Esprit that turned into a submarine.
Oh, the Lotus Esprit, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
Esprit,
that was famous, yes.
Yeah, the Lotus Esprit submarine car from the movie. Well, a guy in 1989, a contractor in Long Island, decided to buy a storage unit for $100 without knowing its contents. Storage war style. When he and his brother opened it up, they found a giant lump covered in blankets, and underneath it was a white car with no wheels and a dented roof. Having never seen the Bond movie before, the pair assumed it was just a junk car. But when they loaded the car onto a truck and started driving around, people stopped them and asked them how they got a hold of what they thought was a reproduction of the Spy Who Loved Me car. So him and his brother went out and rented The Spy Who Loved Me on VHS to learn what they had. Turns out it was the actual car from the movie.
Fantastic.
According to the CNBC story, the blue-collar working guys who decided to stay anonymous took the car to auction and fetched $1.1 million for it.
Nice.
No one knows how the car got lost for so long, but the story remains a mystery. It's unclear how the car ended up in storage in Long Island. Douglas Readiness, co-founder of Ian Fleming Foundation, said the car was used for promoting the movie in 1977 and was in a paid storage for 10 years after that. But somehow the owner of the storage facility, probably the Hollywood studio or production company, stopped paying the storage fee. It just fell through the cracks. These guys bought it.
I could imagine the Broccolis, because Cubby Broccoli was the original producer. And it's funny because there is another story of a similar kind that seems to fit right into this. Because Cubby Broccoli, I believe, also produced Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
All right, before you get into that, I got to take care of a super chat here from Dr. Litch, who says, first presidential debate is underway with Biden and Trump. Opening remarks starts with Biden as he fumbles his words and rambles on. Trump's opener walks over to give Biden a cookie and a juice box.
Surprised me.
That's it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see.
But this car, you have to understand, isn't a real submarine. It was used for the filming of the movie.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so it only looks like a submarine, and it can be submerged, but only for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, they drove it out of the water onto the beach. One that the one that they will have used in the underwater scenes, that will clearly have just been a mock-up. But
Right.
in the actual film, you do see a car driving out of the water onto the beach. And then
Yes.
Roger Moore makes some sarcastic comment out of the window to the bathers, looking on in disbelief before he drives off. So yes, there must have been a real car that at least was capable of being submerged coming out of the water.
There were several cars actually.
Yeah, this was definitely one of the ones used for filming, though, because apparently it had.
Well, obviously they were all used for filming, but what I mean is there were obviously certain ones that you could drive. Then there was the one that you could actually go underwater with, and then there were the transitional ones coming up from the water. So they probably had at least 5 different variations of that car.
Yeah, but apparently one of them ended up in a storage unit, and the production company forgot to pay the bill.
Yeah.
As I say, the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang car, that is out and about and live. I mean, I remember I saw some documentary once where there's this old chap. I don't know whether he was somebody who worked on the film set or he is the heir of someone who worked on the film set, but they ended up with the car. So it just appears to be that Broccoli and his productions, they didn't really care that much for the vehicles or any other props once they had finished doing the movie. And this chap, once when it's nice weather, don't say anything, I know that's a rare occasion in England, but nonetheless, when it's nice weather, he will get out Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and will go driving round the neighborhood, the countryside, with this remarkable car. And kids everywhere will, their eyes almost come out of their sockets when this thing goes by, as you can imagine. And he said, he said he's time and time again had offers from left, right, and centre, but he's just not interested. He just wants to keep this absolutely unique, beloved car. Yeah. So it's remarkable that you then say that yes, the Lotus Esprit also seemed to have gone missing. So.
But I don't think they really understood the whole concept of props and selling that.
Yeah.
There was no eBay back then, remember? So, I mean, either you could sell it on, like, what do they call Sotheby's or something? Or
Sotheby's, yeah.
Yeah. Or, there's nothing in between. Now, obviously...
There wouldn't have been any sort of Hollywood museums or anything like that back then.
Yeah, I don't even know if they would have a concept for it in that sense, So it's understandable that these things got lost because nobody really thought they were worth anything. If they weren't going to use it in the next movie, then whatever. That's my guess.
Well,
Yeah, that was also one of the things that back then they wouldn't have made films with the idea of potentially making a sequel. So once you finish doing it, you just get rid of what you've got. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they knew that they were going to make more Bond movies, but they probably figured that, next movie will have something cooler.
We'll have a different car. Yeah. We won't be repeating the submarine. Gag.
Well, this idea of like keeping props from movies and buying props from movies at auction to display publicly was kind of created by Hollywood elite action stars in the 90s.
The Planet Hollywood.
Yeah,
Planet
Hollywood. People
cafes,
who founded. Yeah, the people. Do you guys know who founded Planet Hollywood? It was Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis, Demi Moore, and Whoopi Goldberg.
Yep.
Founded Planet Hollywood, and now it's just kind of a thing that they like. Lots of people do. Like I've been to the Planet Hollywood Casino in Tunica, Mississippi, and they have one of the 3 DeLoreans from Back to the Future on display there.
Mm-hmm.
You could take pictures next to it. They have it like roped off. You can't sit in the fucking thing, which pisses me off. But
am I the only?
Well, it's understandable.
Am I the only person who's thinking that Demi Moore and Whoopi Goldberg were the diversity hires there in that particular entrepreneurship?
No, Demi Moore
names are somewhat larger, aren't they, as far as Hollywood is concerned?
Well, money is money.
Well, at the time, Demi Moore was married to Bruce Willis.
Well, there's that.
Oh, well, there you go. See,
and I don't know how Whoopi got in on that, but other than that, Whoopi seems to be the odd one out because I don't think she was. I think she was just a friend of.
I mean, she had
Moore.
some big hits in her day, but yes, I mean, when you compare, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and it's and Bruce Willis, it's a completely different ballgame. Yes.
Well, I mean, I guess they were friends or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they were friends. So, and at the time, like I said, Demi Moore was married to Bruce Willis, so and it kind of, I guess they were together for a party and decided to. Wouldn't it be a great idea to open like a big fucking restaurant that has all kinds of Hollywood shit everywhere?
Yeah,
I think
it's a pretty good idea.
Was it only Hollywood stuff, or did they also have sort of guitars played by famous musicians and things like that?
Yeah, that's Hard Rock Cafe.
Yeah, you're thinking Hard Rock.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm confusing things there. Yeah.
Yeah. They probably had like one or two things. Like, I think the original Planet Hollywood did have like a couple guitars by Elvis, but Elvis was also an actor.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be like a guitar that he used on stage, probably a guitar he used in a movie, But yeah, I mean, Planet Hollywood or Hollywood Casino in Tunica is kind of the same thing. They have all kinds of memorabilia. They got an Elvis suit up in a frame. They have a Frank Sinatra microphone. It's kind of cool,
Right.
You're walking around gambling and eating cheap buffet food while simultaneously looking at the massive Titanic sticking out of the Mississippi River in the center of the hotel. I'm not joking. Hollywood Casino has this model of the Titanic sticking up through the floor of this fucking building. Indoors.
That's pretty awesome. Anyway, we're coming up on 2 hours, so we're going to start rounding off.
Yep.
Does anyone have anything you want to talk about before we go?
No,
there's nothing immediately that springs to mind. No,
we've covered all the bases.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, I think I've established Britain as the sort of crime capital of the world. If you want to commit a proper crime, as opposed to just rob a post office.
Yeah. I think we can agree to that.
And I've established that you never know, you might get lucky and buy a storage unit and have $1 million comic book inside.
Yeah, it made me want to go out and buy storage units now.
I know, right?
Anyway, we got a super badge, I guess that's what it's called, from Ravenous Demon. Sends us some devil horns. Thanks for that, man. Hell yeah. All right, man. Yeah, so you want to shill anything before we go?
No, not really. If you guys want to check out my content, you know where to find me. MagogMorscar.com is my website.
Always planning to take over the world, yes?
Yes. And from MagogofMorscar.com, you can find links to everything, my YouTube channel and my stores and all that stuff. And you did get another super chat right there at the end.
Yep. Go ahead, Britisher first, though.
No. My channel, I do sort of, topical content every week when I talk about what's happened during the week. And once in a while, I do an essay, often something sort of cultural or historical or whatever. The last one was about economics, container shipping, would you believe it? But there's a story to it.
Obviously, I've seen that one. I loved it. So, yeah, go check that out. It's very interesting if you like to learn something.
It's what in cricket terms they call a bit left of field. You wouldn't really expect container shipping to be of interest until you kind of hear the story. And then, yes, it is somewhat remarkable. So, yeah.
Indeed.
Anyway, check it out if you feel like it.
Very good. We got a last minute super chat here from Syria Flora. I may be butchering your name there. Sorry. Y'all stay awesome. Thank you, good sir or ma'am. We will.
British people really have trouble feeling awesome. It's something rather American.
That's true. Americans are awesome. And on that note, I will bid you for... Oh, my God, there's another super chat. Okay, so we have to do this one. Dr. Litch says, with a $10 super chat, when did excellence become a horizontal trend instead of a vertical one? Mediocrity, I mean. Well, anyone got any explanation for that before we go?
I'm somewhat speechless.
I think
modern gen. Oh, go ahead.
I think he means that excellence is not something people strive for anymore. They just want to be the same. That's what they want. If I interpret it correctly. Sorry?
Is he having a dig at us?
Oh, what?
What I mean is this a very cleverly veiled criticism as the three of us?
I have no idea.
This is the unprofessional.
We're unprofessional, and he's giving us money. So,
well, there is that. Yes.
You better before you go check your Streamlabs. Make sure you got everything too.
That is true. Let's do that. Let's be very professional, although we're so unprofessional. Nope, we're caught up. We're caught up.
I will say that I think we've kind of bred an entire generation of lazy people that have too much fucking time on their hands. So nobody strives to be excellent. We've taken the tiger away, you know?
Yeah.
So
pretty much.
People.
Yeah, go ahead.
People need more in their lives, I think. They need to. I mean, it's all good to sit around and play video games now and again and have fun, have your hobbies, but at the same time, maybe we should start teaching people that might be a good idea to get out and do something productive and creative or build something instead of tear it down, you know?
Yeah, build something, create something.
Let's not run a YouTube channel because we don't want the competition.
All right, so I think we'll call it a night then, huh?
Yep.
Everyone's done? All right. Thank you very, very much for showing up. Thank you for your kind donations. It's very much appreciated. And I hope to see you soon in the next stream. So thanks for watching and see you next time.